Hey everybody, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel for another video. It's a Fun Fold Friday, finally! Oh my goodness, my time has been so crazy. So I'm sorry, it was 3 weeks in between, but here we are. This is what we're going to be making, a Z-Fold card. I'm going to show you a mini slimline and one that will also fit into an A2 size card. But these are so fun. If you've never made one, come along with me. So this is what we're using. We're using the Just Plain Awesome stamp set and die set from Fawn Stamps. Just so cute, those little mice with their little airplanes. And I decided to pair it up with this paper. It's called Road Trippin'. I know it's not available. I thought it might be, but it is definitely not. So just go through your stash, use what you got. But yeah, this stuff is fun. It's a shame it's not available anymore. And that's what my goal is, just to kind of use what I have. So we're going to go ahead and start coloring. I'm going to put the colors up on the screen. Everything is pretty basic, and there isn't a ton of color that I am using. It's mostly going to be grays and browns because the mice are all going to be brown. But yeah, so I do apologize that I took so long in between our last Fun Fold Friday. My goal is to do them every other week, but this summer has just, well, it's not even summer yet. Spring into summer has already been off to a crazy, crazy start. And I'm thinking it'll start slowing down once we get past June. But personally, there's just been a lot going on. And I will say, I don't know if you're like me, but if there's a volunteer opportunity and somebody desperately needs help, or if there's just a need arises, I tend to be the person that's like, okay, I can fill that. I can do that. And then I end up, I don't want to say overcommitting. I always make everything work, but I do it almost to a detriment of myself. I wear myself out. And so I see a need and I'm like, we can do that. We can make that happen. And again, to a detriment, I suppose. But I don't know. Are you like that? Or is it just, I know it can't just be me. I know there are people. And then in that process, find that I am not always the best at managing my time. I get stuff done. And then, well, like this, the Fun Fold Friday had to get pushed a whole week. The video was done. The video was done. The pictures were taken. I ran out of time to edit. Otherwise, this would have been up. And I was kicking myself, but, sometimes you need to take a rest. And that's kind of what I did. So you'll notice my videos, if you stick around, or if you're one of my regular people, thank you for sticking around. But also, you'll notice I've been a little bit sporadic lately with posting. It's just been a little bit of craziness, and it will get better. I do have a bunch on the calendar to post, but yeah, just gotta make it all work. So anyway, as you can see, we are coloring all of our mice the same. We are using my Olo markers. If you are unfamiliar with those, they are alcohol markers. I know that a lot of people know about Copics. I actually am going to bring in my Copics as well. These are great to combine with other alcohol markers. And I think I've really gotten the hang of the Olos. Like anything, I think there is a little bit of a learning curve. These are very juicy, and they stay juicy because of the type of mechanism that is inside the marker itself. And so it took a little bit to get used to how juicy they are, because one of the things I've noticed about my Copic markers, while I love them and I will use them, I'm having a hard time with the idea that they dry out the way that they do, or if the cap isn't on there securely, or if there's a tiny crack. I haven't noticed any tiny cracks, but recently I've opened up, a few markers and they've been dry. I've got a whole stack of about 10 to 15 markers that are completely dried out. And the only way to really revive those, if they're completely dried out, is to replace the nib. And I just don't have any of those on hand. And I'm just kicking myself because I'm like, that's just not where I want to spend the money right now. So I'm going to keep using my Olos, and I will bring in my Copics where I can, and where I have, where my Olos are missing, numbers. And so I'll just use them together, and they, like I said, they work fine. So we're bringing in some pinks. We've got some R81 and R85, and then we're also going to bring in some blues for, going back to the Olos, we're going to bring in some blues for the scarf, and then a light blue for the glasses, which I didn't show. But then once we're done coloring all of these, we're going to bring in those matching dies that go along with these, and we're going to cut them all out. Now you could go without the matching dies, but I've grown quite accustomed to them. You could fussy cut them if you like. I know people have scan and cuts or scan and goes or whatever they're called, but yeah, so I just have those matching dies and I love them. So they're all cut out. I have enough for 2 cards. So let's get started. This is our slimline. You're going to need a piece of cardstock that measures 9 inches by 6 inches, and we are going to be doing real time for a little bit here. I'm going to bring in my Scor-Buddy and I am going to score this at 3 inches and at 6 inches. So because that was 9 inches, every one of those panels is 3 inches. And we're going to do this kind of accordion or Z. It's going to look like a Z fold. So you just fold it in on each other. And that's how that's going to look. And then I'm going to open it back up. That's how I want it to open. I'm going to open that back up and I'm going to mark it at 2 inches from the bottom. So basically at 4 inches, I'm just going to take a pencil and I'm going to mark at 4 inches. You could do this at any spot that you really wanted. I just decided I thought 2 inches was good. And then when we cut this, we're going to cut from that mark that I made with my pencil to that second score line. I'm using my guillotine trimmer. It might be easier if you just used a bigger trimmer, I guess. But yeah, I just love my guillotine so much. And it worked fine. I was able to figure it out. And so that's how that's going to fold up. And so there are spots that you'll be able to see. So I brought in some patterned paper. Again, that's from that road tripping. And I'm going to cut it to be 3 inches by 6 inches. I cut 4 of them. I ended up discovering you really only need 2, depending on how you want to do this. And so I've got a couple extra pieces that are cut in half, but I only end up using 2 of those. And so in order to do this, I was thinking about it for quite a bit because I wanted to have a nice little border around there and I knew I was going to have to kind of measure. So I'm going to measure up to that for the first panel. We know that it was marked at 2 inches and then it goes to the next score line, which is actually at 4 inches. So I'm going to mark this piece of paper at 2 inches and at 4 inches. So I'm marking it at 2, marking it at 4 with my pencil. And then I'm going to trim that paper down using the guillotine trimmer from those 2 marks. And that's going to be our first panel. If you want there to be a nice little border around it, you're going to trim it down just a tiny bit. If you want it to completely fill that up, don't trim it down. I'm going to trim off about 1/8 of an inch on this side and 1/8 of an inch on this side. And then I'm going to trim off a little bit on this side as well. I don't know. I'm eyeballing it. If you need things to be very precise, I'm not always good at that. So, but see, that works. That looks pretty good in there. And that's going to be our first panel. And then this piece, I just didn't want to lose it or not use it. So this is where I was like, oh, I could use this on this part. It will only show in the area once it's closed. So I'm just going to trim this down to be a rectangle and trim it down just a tiny bit more. And then I'm going to put that up at the top when I do put this together, and you'll see that that means that that's the part that's going to show once it's closed. Now I need another piece. This is where I was like, yeah, I really didn't need all those. So I'm going to mark this one at 4 inches, and you do need to pay attention to how you're cutting these. So I'm going to mark it at 4 and go to the very top. So up, that would be 6 inches. Pay attention to how you are cutting these pieces of paper because it's going to flip-flop basically. Because this piece needs to be shown on that inside piece. Trimming it down again about 1/8 of an inch and then a little bit off of where I cut it. And then I'm going to just stick that in there to show you how that looks. Looks great and it's going to work. So once we get all those ready, got all of our pieces, we can start attaching everything. So now I need some cardstock. This is white cardstock. Obviously it's white. And I'm going to trim this down to be 5 3/4. So remember, this is a mini slim line. So it's 6 inches all the way to the top. But I want that white not to go all the way to the top. So I cut it down to 5 3/4. And then I'm going to cut this down to 2 3/4. So each of these will be 2 3/4 by 5 3/4. And again, you do it how you are comfortable. I just wanted there to be a little bit of a border. So I only needed 2 of those. And these are going to go on the inside, so they won't be seen. And so again, I need to mark this one at 4 inches. And because it's white paper, it really doesn't matter. You don't have to pay that much attention to the orientation of it because you can always flip it, it's white on both sides, so you don't have to worry about that. And so I'm going to trim from the 6-inch mark or the 5 3/4 inch mark down to the 4-inch mark, and that's going to fit in there perfectly. Love it. And then my other piece just needs to be able to fit in there, and so it's ready to go. So I'm going to start attaching everything. We're going to use liquid glue. As you can see, we've bumped up our speed again. We're down to double time. So you put your pattern paper there. I'm going to put this white piece here. This is going to be a great place to write to my recipient. And then the white on the other side will be a really good place to continue my sentiment to our recipient, keeping in mind that I'm going to attach some of that pattern paper to the very top. But these are a lot of fun to decorate. You'll see once I get started with all those adorable little mice in their paper airplanes. And then we'll put this piece in here. Now you could go crazy and you could decorate all the sides that you wanted, but I just wanted the pieces that would be shown while it's closed, and then once it's opened up, the inside. I did decide to stamp out some of those little hearts and squiggles, and we're going to use the matching die to go along with that. And I'm going to stamp out some sentiments here, so I used my magic powder tool. I'm going to stamp up those 2 sentiments, and we're going to stamp it at the bottom of this piece of cardstock. And then we will cover that with that fine detail white embossing powder, and then we're going to heat set that till that is smooth and melted. Super important to use that anti-static powder tool, especially on cardstock like this, because that powder will stick to all the places. So bringing in those matching dies, we'll run that through the die cutting machine, and now we can start assembling. And so I do apologize, Miles is going to come in and out of here. He is ready to eat, and so as I've always said, Miles will never be ignored. At least in his mind, he definitely won't be ignored. So yeah, which can be a little frustrating because he will step all over your projects. So I'm going to start attaching down our little airplanes. I do a much better job on the second one of really thinking about where those are going to go. And you'll see that once it's all finished. But we'll attach the little squiggles so that it looks like our planes were flipping around. And then we're going to attach this little guy to that side. I end up deciding we are not going to be able to use the squiggle. It's just not going to work. There's not enough space. So we'll just glue him down. And I didn't use any foam tape on these because, just the nature of the way this closes. So we'll put our little airplane up here and we'll add one of his little squiggles behind him. And then we can attach our other sentiment to this panel. Thanks for helping me fly. And then we'll put this little guy in here. Those mice are so fun to color. They're so cute too. Put a piece of paper down here. And then this little guy who's getting ready to fold his plane. Yeah. And then we'll attach this plane up there. And then when we are done with that, that's going to finish off this card. So this is a mini slimline, which measures 3 inches by 6 inches when it's all closed up and will fit into one of those mini slimline envelopes just fine. So here's the one that's going to fit into an A2 sized envelope. We're going to measure this 10.5 inches by 5.5 inches. All right, so if you divide 10.5 by 3, because you need them to be all 3 the same size, we are going to score at 3.5 inches. And now my Scor-Buddy doesn't go to 7 inches, so all I'm going to do is flip my cardstock, turn it, and score again at 3.5 inches. That means that all of those, like I said, are 3.5 inches. So then we do the Z-fold again. Same process. I marked mine at 2 inches. You could try and mark it wherever you wanted, but just make sure when you cut this line, you go to that second score line. And then it's going to be the same process, basically. I am going to cut my pattern paper because I didn't want to waste any of it. I'm cutting my pattern paper in half to be 3 inches by the 6 inches. And then I'm just going to have a big border on the 2 sides. We are going to trim these down so that they go from top to bottom, but they have that nice border on each of the sides. I really, really like this paper, and I love that bluish cardstock, and together they just go so well. So I'm marking it with my pencil so I can just trim those up. And like I said, again, we're just going to decorate it the same way. And if you use your pencil just to kind of mark it, it makes it super simple for this one. Because like I did not measure exactly where those score lines end up once you're folded in. So like this one, I'm just going to take my piece of paper and we'll mark it at the very top, and we'll mark it at the second score line, the first and the second score line. Then we can trim that down, and then we can just add that in there. My white cardstock, we're going to do that the same. We're just going to trim that down once we get to it. But I'm going to go ahead and adhere these in there because I know they go in there. We'll do the same thing with the front of this one. I'm saving the other piece because I'm going to wait to attach it until we have our white cardstock. And this one's ready to go. We can just trim it down. And there they are. Like I said, decorated completely the same, but one is a mini slimline and one can fit in an A2 size envelope. These are so much fun. I would love to know what you think of this series. Thank you for sticking around. Sorry it's taken me a minute to get up here. I am so grateful for you for watching. If you like this video, hit that like button and definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And be sure to check out the other fun folds. And I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.